The Seattle Kraken hope to bring some of that momentum from that big win against Vegas to Climate Pledge Arena tonight, but there's still a lot to prove. Let's talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken. I am wearing my makeshift Davy Jones hat because the Kraken are coming off a win, and pretty big win also just for community building with the skills challenge. We'll talk a little bit about that. My name, if we're meeting for the first time, Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken, also the founder of Black Rosie Media, where we empower Black women and melanated creators in sports media. And excited to go through some updates. Took yesterday off, back here with you, but want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On Kraken, once again brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You're going to want to make sure you head over to FanDuel, create an account, because new customers can place a $5 bet and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started and make sure you listen to the episode because, hey, we might be able to help you win that first $5 bet. Okay, lots to talk about in Kraken land, my friends. And it all comes down to applying pressure. That's kind of the main point of today's episode. I'm going to then talk to you about some roster updates, and we will then give you some keys to the game against Columbus. I think Dan Bylsma had some really interesting things to say. He was asked a question about how Columbus plays. He talked about where they are kind of in their season and in the last 5 games of theirs. And so really interesting. Applying pressure. We talked about this going into the Vegas game. Oliver Bjorkstrand back in the lineup, Ty Cartier back in the lineup. And wouldn't you know, as that episode was dropping, Ron Francis comes up with more pressure, good pressure. You know, they call it eustress, I believe, is like the good kind of stress. And there's more pressure been added because the Seattle Kraken are bringing back Daniel Sprong. That's right. Ding dong, Daniel Sprong. We haven't gotten to talk about this on the show, but you probably noticed that I dropped the media availability with Ron Francis. If for whatever reason you missed it, don't worry. I'll give you a little snippet in just a moment. But Daniel Sprong back with the Seattle Kraken, a trade with Vancouver. He has not arrived with the team. We'll talk about that a little bit. But this is big time because Daniel Sprong was someone who came to the Seattle Kraken through a PTO, professional tryout, and was undeniable for the Seattle Kraken. The trade is for future considerations with Vancouver. Now, this is from the article from Jeff Baker. When last seen in a Kraken uniform, right winger Daniel Sprong was scoring 21 goals for a playoff-bound team on arguably the NHL's best fourth line. So now he's been reacquired, and there's no mistaking it. He has been brought to the Seattle Kraken to shake things up. And what do we mean by that? Well, first is the offense. And again, you're going to hear from Ron Francis on 2 points. One being why Spronger, but then also what he hopes Daniel Sprong will do to activate the offense, maybe outside of just being a goal scorer himself. So this is Ron Francis speaking before the game, which we now know was a win over the red hot at the time Vegas Golden Knights. They've actually dropped a few games since this. But speaking about Daniel Sprong and how things came together, here's Ron Francis.
Yeah, I know. We've been struggling to score some goals lately. So we're looking at that. Had a conversation with Patrick the other day, and Daniel's name came up. obviously with us. He had a good season, scored 20 with us, scored 18 last year. So knows our team, our locker room, and we thought it was a low-risk gamble to give him a shot. Everybody's kind of different. I know when we first got him, took a little while to get to know him and sort of build that trust and relationship. I think even when he left, it wasn't like he left on bad terms with us. It was basically coming off of 20 goals and playing on our fourth line. We didn't have the money to pay him at that point, so we said go out and test the market, and good for him. He ended up getting a couple $1 million, and that's why we couldn't keep him. It wasn't anything else. So with our locker room, the guys are excited and happy to have him back. Well, I mean, his strong suit is he can skate. He can create things on his own sometimes, goals and stuff, which is good. And he's got a great shot. And he can score on the power play from a distance, which is good too. So all those things right now we're not playing the way we think we're capable of playing, and we're trying to find our game. And hopefully this gives us a little jolt to get things going in the right direction quick. Talking to our team services guy, the guys, he said in the locker room, we're excited to have Daniel coming back. So that's good to hear. I think hopefully guys realize it's another guy fighting for a spot in the roster, and we get other guys to sort of pick their game up a little bit and get going in the right direction as well.
And we're going to get back to Ron Francis because he was asked about the cap situation, which is a great question. But you heard him say, this is a Daniel Sprong who was effective for the Seattle Kraken on a fourth line. Now, the Seattle Kraken, and we're going to talk about this, in that Vegas game, their best line was their fourth line. And Allison Lucan, in her instant analysis after that game, just really talking about how good that fourth line did. So, it's going to be interesting to see how the Seattle Kraken navigate with Daniel Sprong. I mentioned it at the top of this episode, but we know that Oliver Bjorkstrand has been a healthy scratch, Ty Cartier a healthy scratch. Well, wouldn't you know, Ty Cartier assists on one of Turbo's goals. Ollie Bjorkstrand scores in that game. This is what Allison Lucan said in the game against Vegas. The best line for the Kraken was the Yanni Gourde line with Ty Cartier and Brandon Tanev. They played for 7 minutes, 51 seconds, were a +9 in shot attempts, allowed not a single shot on goal against, and generated 100% of shot quality. So message sent, message received. That's what I talked about with Zane Begg, who joins us on the Thursday episodes. It seems like the message has been received from the fourth line and Oliver Bjorkstrand. Now, this game was really interesting for the Seattle Kraken. We're going to hear from Dan Bilesma a little bit later on the show, but multiple times, hold on, let me go to my handy dandy notebook. Multiple times, including in the belt ceremony again. No more Davy Jones hat, so I bring it out. He says that this was the not a perfect game, but the best game of the year. The best second period of the year. The Seattle Kraken had to really show some grit in this game. And that's what you want to see. But I also love that even before this game, and now there'll be ramifications, of course, after that Vegas win, maybe after tonight. If the Seattle Kraken get another win, that would be great. We'll talk about what it's going to take to get that win. There's still pressure. The coaching staff and the front office seem to be in lockstep in applying pressure in ways that are, I think, sensible. I do think Oliver Bjorkstrand sitting, that was the most extreme thing. And honestly, just because I don't think that he was playing poorly, it seemed egregious from my vantage point, but I'm not in the locker room. I'm not at the practices. So, it's a matter of perception. And I've also talked about this with Ty Cartier as well. There is a piece of me that my read on the situation is that if you're going to bench guys to send an overall message, because this is not a team that is out of the woods, not even close. But if you want to send a message An Oliver Bjorkstrand, a Ty Cartier, their demeanor and how they attack the game, they can take that message and receive that message and then do what they have to do. Ty Cartier was asked a little bit about that. He talked about being able to see the game from a different vantage point, to literally be able to observe the game. And then when you hit the ice, go do what you have to do. That's what Oliver Bjorkstrand said. We talked about that on Friday's episode. So, I think those maybe were the right guys, perhaps at the right time. But if the Seattle Kraken can't turn this homestand into a winning streak, how will the team apply pressure? And who will be the odd man out once Daniel Sprong arrives? Well, first he's got to get here. And there are a few other considerations that the Seattle Kraken are dealing with. We'll talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by one of our newer sponsors, and that is SelectQuote. Now, if we think about the World Series, the Super Bowl, or even the Olympics, I've been to the Winter and Summer Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. If you are in good health, they work with carriers that could get you same-day coverage for up to $5 million. No medical exam required. And these policies are more affordable than you think. You could get covered for up to $1 million for as little as $20 per month. Head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Again, get the right life insurance for you or less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. Once again, that's selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Now, we know that you are ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins, if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports partner of the NFL and, of course, us here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala, your captain of Locked On Kraken, wearing my makeshift Davy Jones hat. And it's commitment because these are fresh curls. Thank you very much. And so I'm going all in. The Seattle Kraken got a big win over Vegas, but still plenty to prove. And they have a chance to do it tonight against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Interesting conversation that Dan Bilesma had. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on the episode, just regarding how Columbus is playing right now and also what the Seattle Kraken need to keep an eye out for when Columbus is playing at their best. But some roster updates. We talked about this, a really gruesome, it looked to be gruesome accident. Philip Grubauer out of the lineup. he did suit up for practice. He was at the skills competition, the skills challenge that the Seattle Kraken host every year, but there's something happened to his face. And, he's stitched up, kind of looking like he wanted a little bit more miles on his Halloween costume. It's great to see him out and about. Whatever happened, we're grateful that it wasn't more. But we love to see Philip Grubauer, participating with the team. And the first thing that Dan Bylsma told us today, as part of his media availability, it was a optional morning skate today. He said that Stecka, who had a great game for the Firebirds over the weekend, will be back to backstop Joey Daccord. So we can assume, rightfully, that Joey Daccord will get another start. We've already talked about the wear and tear perhaps on Joey Daccord. That's not really something that Joey or the rest of the team can think about. Stecka will be there in support, but that's probably about it. I think it's safe to say that if we see Stecka in net, then Joey really needed some rest and maybe even beyond that, but we're not expecting that to happen. We don't want to put that energy into the universe, but it will be Joey Daccord starting in net. Stecka, who had a great game for the Firebirds over the weekend, will return to backstop. No real timeline just yet for Philip Grubauer, but the fact that, again, he was able to suit up the other day for practice, he was participating in the weekend festivities with the Seattle Kraken during the homestand, all good signs. What we also know is that Vince Dunn still out. There's a timeline, obviously, that's been put in place where as early as this week he could return. It doesn't sound like that is imminent or something that is guaranteed. He's still very much working his way back. But of course, that will bring up some interesting conversations with regard to the salary cap, especially now that the Seattle Kraken have signed Daniel Sprong. And speaking of Daniel Sprong, I'm going to play another clip from Ron Francis regarding, he was asked about the salary cap and the roster situation. So I want you to hear from him what he had to say. But regarding Daniel Sprong, just today, Dan Bylsma joked that Daniel Sprong is walking from Vancouver to Seattle. Of course, he was joking. But what we heard from Ron, again, I have that full media availability up for you on the Locked On Kraken YouTube page. You can go check that out. We're going to play another clip from Ron in just a minute. But what Ron said, what we've heard throughout the weekend, or I guess yesterday and today from Dan Bylsma, is that the Seattle Kraken are working through visa issues. Now, Daniel Sprong would not be the first player to be a little delayed to Climate Pledge Arena because of visa issues. The one and only rookie Nika Mule from the Seattle Storm also had visa issues. I don't know if it has something to do with the Seattle office. There was also a federal holiday yesterday, so that also created, some barriers, but it sounded like from Dan Bylsma that was getting worked out today, as much as could be worked out today now that office hours are regular. So we heard this from Ron Francis, again, in that clip I have up for you on YouTube. But the estimation is maybe Thursday, Friday, but likely the weekend at the absolute earliest. So what does this mean for the Seattle Kraken with regard to their roster? Well, here's what Ron Francis had to say on Friday.
We've got some time here before Vince comes back, unfortunately. So, we'll take that time and see what our roster is doing. But yeah, we have some decisions we're going to have to make once he's ready to come off the LTI for sure.
Decisions to make once he comes off long-term injured reserve. So to me, this sounds like the Seattle Kraken are expecting to make some moves. They're effectively going to have to make some moves. Today's a game day, so I don't want to spend too much time focusing on the salary cap. And again, no Daniel Sprong yet, no Vince Dunn back from injury. Also, Philip Grubauer out for a little bit. I mean, Stecka is up because that's a goaltender spot. You don't want to have that vacancy. So we have some time to talk about this. We definitely will talk about this. But coming up next on Locked On Kraken, what does Dan Bylsma see as the positives from the Vegas game that he wants to take into Columbus? And what are the things that we have to keep an eye out for when it comes to this Blue Jackets team as they march on in to Climate Pledge Arena tonight? That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you have to do is just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100x your cash. Run your game all season long with Prize Picks. Now, I have Prize Picks on my mobile device, and here are some of the things that I really like. You can 100x your money with as little as 4 correct picks. And this is a real daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so that your lineup stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks will keep that lineup live. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't quite perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. Prize Picks now also, this is really what's great. Prize Picks now offers Venmo for a quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So I've used Prize Picks. I use Prize Picks for WNBA and NHL. Those are the leagues. So I've used Prize Picks. I love that they have WNBA up there. They have NHL up there. Obviously, those are the leagues that I podcast about, but I can also and do place Prize Pick bets on other leagues. NBA is most comfortable for me because, again, I know basketball. So I love that I can check out all of the Prize Picks lineups there, the flex plays, Taco Tuesday, all of these really cool things over at Prize Picks. So download the app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today, ahora mismo, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Seattle hockey fans, the Seattle Kraken are going to look to run their game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, but this is not going to be easy. First things first, as much as the Seattle Kraken needed a win, and you love to get a win against a team that's ahead of you in the standings, as we heard Dan Bylsma say, you want to be able to win against good teams, is what he said the other day. Again, not perfect, but they were able to survive a 5-on-3. They were able to get the win. Now they scored over 4 goals. The Seattle Kraken are 5-0-0. Thank you, Allison Lucan. When scoring 4+ goals in a game, they were 3 for 4 on the penalty kill, which is huge, including that they had to defend a 5-on-3. When we heard from Yanni Gourde, and Dan Bylsma effectively was saying the same thing, but Yanni Gourde said to us that the biggest challenge this year, can you guess? We've been talking about it consistently. That was a big hint. It's consistency. This has not been a consistent Seattle Kraken team. Yanni Gourde talked about that. He also mentioned what we heard the other day. I think it was Jamie Alexiak that was saying it, but about being predictable for your teammates, supporting each other. And that is huge. What Yanni Gourde was talking about is supporting each other in the play, communicating, going tape to tape, having speed in the zone. And all of that is going to be critically important because of how this Columbus Blue Jackets team plays. And Yanni Gourde and Dan Bylsma throughout the weekend both said that the Seattle Kraken need to start on time. They need to be ready from first puck drop. Yanni Gourde said he wants to see the team play with high pace to set the tone. And you're going to hear why Dan Bylsma thinks this is important. And it has to do with a very particular skill set, quite honestly, that the Seattle Kraken have not mastered this year that Columbus has. So even though the Columbus Blue Jackets, are not exactly where they want to be coming into this game, they are 3-5-2 in their last 10 games. Their away record is 1-4-2. That is not something that the Seattle Kraken need to have in their head. And Dan Bylsma made that evidently clear in his morning availability today. Here's Dan Bylsma, though, talking about the specific part of the Columbus Blue Jacket game. This was a question he was asked. I think it was Allison Lucan. I'm not exactly sure. But somebody asked about the transition game of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Here's what Dan Bylsma had to say.
I think, part of that is puck management and how you play with it. They're really good at taking opportunities to get their defense activated in the rush, and that happens, coming out of D zone. You see Borinsky and Provorov and Severson joining and adding to a four-man rush that they're effective at. It's in transition where they go quick up and almost don't bring two defensemen back to go quick up, and the fourth man, the defenseman, is joining the rush, and the Marchenko goal, I believe it was against San Jose, was a great example. They just went quick up, and Severson was the fourth or the third man in the rush, and his shot, and Marchenko going to that and getting the rebound. It's their D being active, and so it's being really good with the puck, not giving them those opportunities to go quick, but also being really aware of you can over pursue a puck, and it allows their defensemen to be active and a factor in the rush. Being cognizant of marking a man and being aware of them trying to jump in the play and getting a body on them to nullify their speed and their getting in the rush.
Dan really liked that question. I really like that question because these are the things that have been the coup de grace, if you will, for the Seattle Kraken this season. We have not been great at the trailing, he's talking about the defenseman getting up in the rush. We've lost the third forward at times, especially on the back door, by puck watching. We have our defenseman selling out in front of our goaltender, who we know will be Joey Decord tonight, and they're doing their job to keep, the near side and the near post clean. And what you need to do is have that forward come to the far post. That's since the beginning of the Seattle Kraken has been a pet peeve of mine. So, but it's not just that. It's the attack and not getting too tight in to where you have those defensemen that then can just move at will. But also I liked what he said about over committing and over pursuing, because when you do that in any area, again, those defensemen, those trailing defensemen, they're going to jump up. And if you over pursue, if you can't find a win in a 50-50 puck battle, that's how this Columbus team can keep the zone. And again, these things have been problematic for the Seattle Kraken just overall. And so when you have a hungry Columbus team, we've seen them already this season, they want to get a win. What did I say? 1-4 and something in their last 10 games. Hold on. I just had it. 1-4-2 on the road. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10 games. The Seattle Kraken are 3-6-1. Both of these teams need a win. And it might have to be gritting it out, just like we did against the Vegas Golden Knights. The Seattle Kraken need to show up on time against the Columbus Blue Jackets, just like they're Vegas, or really any team. The Seattle Kraken cannot afford to play down to any opponents. I don't honestly know who we would be playing down to. Certainly not in the Pacific Division. There's only 2 teams. This is a critical game. And you got to think that it's a critical game for some players, whether they've been identified or not, because they're going to be playing for a spot. And that has to start now. Daniel Sprong is on the team. Vince Dunn is going to come back. And as we heard from Ronnie Francis, that does mean that decisions will be made in a handful of days. And that's why the first segment, and I said the overall theme of this episode is applying pressure. Like I'm hearing under pressure in my head, but I want to change it to applying pressure. Not just because the Seattle Kraken front office and coaching staff is applying pressure to the skaters, to the roster, but the Seattle Kraken have to apply pressure in all 3 zones at all times to be a winning hockey team, to even have a chance at being a winning hockey team. Until the offense starts to generate with regularity, with consistency, the word that I said Yanni Gourde talked about, you cannot guarantee that a good goalie performance or a good defensive performance is going to be enough. It has to be exemplar. It has to be unrelenting. Apply pressure, unrelenting. That's my big key. We know that the Seattle Kraken want to play fast. Yanni got to that. Says when they play with high pace, they play their best. We saw that early in the season, and we haven't seen a consistent return to it. That's it. Apply pressure. Apply pressure because you're under pressure. You are. Come on, Kraken. I want to put this hat on again. I'll ruin my curls for you. Get us a dub at home. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Hold fast. Stay true. And loud and proud, we say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.